Thank you all. Let's take a few minutes to start with some questions and comments that the panelists would like to raise or make with one another.
Yeah, I just want to make one comment. In my presentation and in any of our presentations, I left out one important name in New England, Mary Jane England. In other words, who was critically important for promoting child psychiatry in the public sector, in community psychiatry, and nationally. And so I think she deserves to be recognized.
I just want to take a moment and say that Joan spoke with us to say that there's a car running outside that you may want to take care of. It belongs to you. It's a BMW 2HV 590 Massachusetts. So if it's yours, you may want to shut it off. Is it yours? Okay. Would you like to, would first would the panelists like to comment on one another's talks?
I think it's marvelous that we overlapped a lot.
Yes. Arnie, did you want to say something?
I am just so proud to be here, listen to some of the colleagues that have been so important in terms of the development of the whole field. And I think Myron was very, very honest, truthful, as he said, pragmatic, concrete even, when he said, is there still a child psychiatrist that had our training and had our approach to the child, or is that field now gone?
Good question. Your talks were all stunning, as were your contributions, and give us so much to think about. Really in awe. Would people in the audience like to raise questions or make comments? Yes. Do you want to come up and speak into the mic? I don't think we can hear you. You may.
Please, it's very important for us to hear you, really.
We'd like to hear you, we can't hear you.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I can just speak up. So, as a young gun to go there, I do.
Yes, it would be better.
Thanks, Dr.
Shyness disappears with age.
Okay, all right. So I'm Rohit Chandra. I'm a child psychiatrist at MGH Chelsea. I trained with Dr. Gare at BU when I was a medical student and resident. And I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who spoke. This was really a wonderful tour through your lives, through history. And the point I wanted to make was that, or the thing I want to echo was that the diagnostic assessment is so important. And really being able to be good diagnosticians, because it seems like in this day and age, people are prescribing a lot of medication, and if something doesn't work, more medication is added. And that ends up causing all sorts of problems for for kids, for their families. So I think it's just so important to be a good diagnostician. I'm very glad that you echoed that.
So how do you manage that?
I mean, I do think most of us were well trained. Well, I mean, I trained at MGH, and I felt like I was well trained in the other aspects in psychopharm as well as therapy. And I think like Dr. Hartman was saying, I mean, really looking at things in a multidisciplinary way, trying to really just determine what is happening with that particular child, looking at an individual case, as you mentioned, Dr. Kersner. So I think really trying to understand deeply that individual case and not sticking with some sort of really rigid way of thinking.
Thank you so much.
So thank you.
Could I add that as
Yeah,
part of the
yes.
curmudgeon quality of being an elderly child psychiatrist, I have for the last 10 or 20 years routinely, when consulting on something or other to a hospital or to a child, said of a child on 5 or 6 psychiatric medications, could anyone in the room explain to me what each of these medications is doing and what evidence do you base that on? They never can. So one of my uses of my authority has been to take kids off the 3rd and 4th and 5th and 6th medicine.
Wow.
Yes.
I just wanted to make a passing reference to Hutch, and you can probably, who actually established the clinics in Massachusetts.
Just so people could hear, Ken was making a reference to Hutch, so.
He's speaking about Blendon Hutchison, who is the commissioner for children here in Massachusetts, and actually was the architect for something called Year of the Child. In other words, back in the 70s, which was quite remarkable, in other words, and never replicated.
Ken, would you like to elaborate? Would you like us to bring the mic and to speak about Dr. Hutchinson? Or
No,
Myron said it all.
I could hear more about what led up to, I knew him in 65.
Yes.
And that was about it.
Okay.
But I was hoping people to know history there.
I think you'd like to, would you like to come up? We have another member of the audience.
So I just made the under 45 cut. And I see some of my mentors here, some who are not here, some whom I was a little too young to be mentored by. And I do want to say just a plug for Cambridge Health Alliance, that a lot of what was spoken about here today is very much alive and well at that institution. And that there are those of us who are still trying to find a way to do truly holistic, integrated care. I recently was talking to my husband, who's not in the profession, saying, it seems like psychiatry is really getting crushed between managed care and big pharma. That it is such a tragedy. Unfortunately, I think many of us feel like we have to opt out of medical establishments in order to provide the quality of care, the type of holistic care that we feel that our patients and their families and communities need. And fortunately, there are some institutions that do offer those kinds of opportunities. As Larry Hartman knows, there's one of them is the Community Therapeutic Day School where I'm working. There are these institutions that manage to fly under the radar so that they're allowed to do really good work without getting crushed.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Alicia, come right up. Do you want to come up, please?
One of the aspects of this organization and in general of child psychiatry that hasn't been pointed out is the friendliness and the acceptance that I think by reason of the personality of a child psychiatrist I have experienced and benefited by coming from another country and from another culture. That's been very wonderful to be in Boston, be at the Bethesda Hospital, have the friends that I have had, and this organization has been very wonderful. I do share a lot of the experiences, the romantic experience that many people have talked about, because I arrived in this state at a time when a lot was happening and a lot of community psychiatry was very good. At the same time, I was maybe the one who joined the enemy, and that is that I was the first child psychiatry in the first HMO in Massachusetts. And I'm very proud of it, and I thought it was the training that I had in Mexico first, and then here in Massachusetts, served me very well because a lot of these wonderful programs, which I certainly was part of it to begin with here, were very good, but I think the rest of the world really needed insurance. I experienced that in Mexico City because when I went to medical school, it was the beginning in Mexico, it was the beginning of Social Security. And I saw, when I finished medical school, I went to work as a GP in the Imperial Valley Desert in Mexico, and there was the only medical care was provided by all the people that were forced to pay the government for our education by working for a year or two with the people where there was really no facilities of any kind. So I saw that the need for people to be covered by some of the wonderful benefits that were being seen and developed in many of these different groups was necessary. And I'm very glad that I went to the Harvard Community Health Plan and that they developed to what it is now. So I wanted to speak in favor of that and continue to extend. And I think it depends a lot on the people, what services you give to, in spite of the insurance. I think we submit to the regulations. But when I went first to the Harvard Community Health Plan, the benefit was 10 sessions. And I said, what do you mean 10 sessions? And I came to from the Bethesda Hospital. I was in psychoanalytic training. And I said, you can't treat children, 10 sessions. And they said, well, how much do you want? And I said, a year. And they said, okay, So I continue to work like that the rest. I'm still working. But I think it's up to us. Whether if the insurance says 15 minutes, and you really say 15 minutes, I think you have to rebel. I think you have to protest, and I think you have to give the patients what they need, and you have to try to change things. And sometimes all what it takes is filling the papers to get extensions, arranging. When I went to work at Worcester, Community Center, lots of people didn't show up, so you have to keep on going and seeing the patient and do whatever you need. So I think you all young people who are not here, really, we need to encourage them, not to just accept, but continue to do what many of the people, older people, did and developed. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Ray, yes.
I've had this uncanny feeling of my professional life passing by my eyes and ears here, and feels very much like an alumni meeting. I've been watching Pope Francis for the last 2 days, and I had the nice feeling, I think he would be very comfortable in this group. I think we would. Yeah, I think we would. We got the same kind of model. And having to do with this, I've spent a lot of time in community mental health. It started in Roxbury when Dick Chasen asked me to come down and help to keep the Putnam Center afloat to become a black community clinic. Of course, I was right. It was a year after Martin Luther King was assassinated, and we had to guess who the FBI agent was and former. They always thought it was me, but the one that kept pointing the finger at me was the one. Anyway, I had to leave there because I was getting radicalized, and the Black Panthers wouldn't accept me, and I was the wrong color. So I went to Lawrence Mental Health Center, where there had been a very old community mental health center founded by Mary Bain in the 1950s. And she had worked a good deal with Gerald Kaplan. And so we had a system already going. It was about ready to die, and I got a new injection of people backing in it. And one of the beautiful things, and you found it in your area, Joe. Well, somebody said there has never been a money drive for charity in Lawrence that ever failed. And that's true. That's a very poor community now. Or it's always been. And it had 62 different ethnic groups, now 63 with the Vietnamese. And Mary laid down some roots, which then became the Community Mental Health Center. And I won't bother you with our travails, but we had a staff of 44 people, and we were reaching out in the community. And I think the community model is where it's at. And I think if we could build on the community pediatric clinics, and the big thing is making us doctors again. It's such a thrill, that I think if we were to push a model, and that 1963 law written under Jack Kennedy was a very comprehensive law and very useful law, what I discovered was that the flaw in Massachusetts is every community, we had a very good community board, every community would submit their own budgets and take their own chances. But there was a law in passing Chapter 735 here, is that Harry Solomon said it's going to come from central office. So decentralization never really happened. Even though what I saw, and Ken Bryant in Lowell, what I saw was the community really picked up and did more than did their share. They finally got fed up. And we've got a model which is going to allow us to escape from the clutches of insurance. I think that community mental health model should be revisited. As a result, I went into private practice and continued my own community mental health model. I'm in my third generation of patients.
Just wanted to introduce, this is Dr. Ray Yerkes, and past president of NECAP. Ray, thank you so much. I know that we have other questions, but I'd encourage you to raise them at the, okay, one more. We're going to have a town meeting after Joe Jankowski and Gregory Fritz speak, but Peter Shunteman?
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you. This is a wonderful morning. I think this is a historic morning for all of us here and also those who are not here. But I might like to add that as Skip was at the BI still, he was gracious enough to accept me as a staff child psychiatrist just coming out of training at the Yale Child Studies Center. That was interrupted also with 2 years through the Army draft during the Vietnam War. I was then at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. My career path went a little bit differently, but it reflects also the changes of the times. I came to the BI because I was needed as a child psychiatrist in Roxbury at the child care program that Robert Burke, the pediatrician at the BI, had established, and it was a pioneer program. It was during the 60s, and part of my work there was consulting with the Head Start program. One night, there was a great unrest in Roxbury, and the parents of the Head Start program were also politically involved, and there was concern that tension was rising. So they asked me to come to that parent meeting and speak. I was a year out of training, and so I spoke, and I found that the longer I spoke, the calmer the parents became. I spoke, I think, for about an hour about what I was doing in the Head Start program and how the BI was supporting child development and child care. Subsequently, I then became interested in divorce consultation. This was at a time when there was no joint custody statute in Massachusetts, which I believe was established around 1980, and this was in the early 70s. I learned a lot about consulting with lawyers and with judges. At the time, there was a juvenile court judge who was known beyond Boston's boundaries, Poitras, Judge Poitras, at the Boston Juvenile Court Clinic. And the students from the Harvard Legal Aid coached me how to respond to cross-examinations. From there, I became interested. By that time, Alicia Gavaldia, got me on board with the Harvard Community Health Plan. And there was a family psychologist, Shell Miller, who's still practicing now, intergenerational family therapy, which was, to me, a fascinating subject, and I then learned a great deal about family therapy there, as well as about my own family. I was originally from Germany and came to the United States in 1959. Then, more recently at Children's Hospital, I realized that family therapy is critical for children with developmental disorders and chronic conditions. This is a family condition also, and impact on siblings of children with developmental disabilities. So you see the political developments as well as the professional developments and developments in genetic all impact on my career. And I think there's only one example of how our profession has progressed over the years. Thank you.